Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the final webinar of the year. For this morning, we're going to be talking about versioning. So just, I wanted to do a quick sound check. Can you raise your hand if you could hear me? Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for raising your hand. So before I move on, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Claudine Ting, and I'm the marketing specialist for client success here at SmartSimple. So as mentioned earlier, for this morning, we will be talking about versioning, most likely the basics of it. Am I correct?
Yep.
And I think I'm just gonna get Jason over here to say some words about what to expect for today's webinar.
Yeah, so my name is Jason. For anyone who doesn't know me, I've worked with the support team for going on 2 years, well, almost 2 years. And I've used versioning myself in 1 or 2 systems, and I think it's a good tool for system admins. Like Claudine was saying, this is basically just going to be the basic run through of versioning for you as a system admin. And I titled the presentation "The Better Way to Create Application Forms with Versioning" because it really is a tool that takes a lot of stress off you. It saves you as a system admin a lot of time when you're making these changes to your custom fields. And it's very powerful, and I think you'll really get a lot out of it, especially if you're not familiar with it. So let me move on to what our agenda is for today. So first thing we're going to go through is what is versioning and the importance of versioning. We'll look at how to enable versioning in your system for the first time. Also, I have a cold, so if my voice sounds really terrible, it's not your speakers, it's just me. We'll also look at controlling custom fields in versions, activating a new version in a UTA, the best practices for versioning and changing custom fields, and we'll go through a little demo and Q&A session. So I'll demo what we talked about in our demo system, and then you guys can ask me any questions that you have. Or if you have if you do have like questions while I'm speaking, you can always just type those out too, and we'll go through them. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about what versioning is and its importance. So versioning is a tool in SmartSimple where it allows you to make basically concurrent versions of your custom fields in your UTA, and so you can work on them separately while having a completely different version live and available to your applicants. So it's important because, like I said before, it really reduces the work that's required to do changes to your application forms. So you can have like, for example, this year's version of your custom fields available to your end users, while you, the system admin, or you and your staff work on the custom fields for next year's version of your application forms. And this new upcoming version will be completely hidden to your end users until you decide to make it available, which is fantastic because that previously the way people used to have to do that is they'd have to be testing in backup or dev or maybe on production with hard coding a lot of visibility conditions. You might get your syntax wrong, fields might be showing up to your applicants, and you're like, well, I didn't want this to happen. That caused a lot of confusion. So versioning really saves you from that problem. It's also important because it allows you to preserve the way your past application forms looked exactly. So it's very faithful to the previous forms of those. And that's good in case you need to look back at how something was maybe 2-3 cycles ago, and from there take some feedback and look at how to change it for the next upcoming cycle. So, sorry guys. For anyone who has never enabled versioning in their system before, the first thing that you have to do is you have to enable the smart versioning feature from global settings. So if you see on my slide here, I have a few boxes with just like a little flowchart of the path that you take. So first you go to global settings as a system admin. You click the smart versioning option under the system tab. Then when you're in the smart versioning option, there's the familiar plus sign, which means that we're going to make a new version. So you click that. Then here, as you can see in this box, once you click that, you'll get a few boxes where you can set up the basics for your version. So you can give it a name, a description, and you can fill out the condition field, which we'll come back to later. To touch on like a best practice for the naming, it's normally best that you give the new version a name that corresponds to like the point in time for your version, so that way when you're looking back, you know exactly what time frame this version represented. Or if you're working on like a project, you can just name it with regards to the project too. But just make sure that the name is you know valuable and easy for you to read as a system admin. So once you've filled out these description parts of the version, you click the save button, and then as you see in the final box here, an option for the version objects will appear, and that's where you would select like the UTA, the entity, the levels that you want your version to be of. So our next slide is an example of how from within your UTA, you'd be able to manipulate the different custom fields in different versions. So at the top of the screen, you see there's a drop-down marked version, and there are several options in there. So from there, you can select which custom fields in which version you want to view, and you can edit them there.
I got a question over here, Jason. Can you do versioning on level 2 activities?
Yes, you can definitely make a new version for your level 2 activities. If you want, I can take you through that a little later. If we can do that for the demo, if that's okay. Yeah, but yeah. So long story short, yes, you can definitely do it on level 2 activities. So as we were saying, up here in the top corner is where you would change the version that you're looking at, and your custom fields would reflect that. What I'd like to draw your attention to, and a core tenet that we'll be discussing shortly, is that at the top of the version list, there's something that says core field set. So everything in versioning is based on this core field set. So when you take when you make a new version, the core field set is the baseline of fields. It's like the collection of all the fields. And when you make a new version, you're taking a snapshot of this baseline. So the best practice for you as a system admin is always to think of make your changes in the core field set and then make your version off that and promote it upwards, if that makes sense. So in our next slide, so we've spoken about how to look at your versions from the back end, from the list of custom fields. So this is an actual record, and here you can also see that you can actually switch through the different versions and see what the record would look like in all these different iterations. So at the top right hand corner, you see there's a drop down, again marked version, with a button marked set to the right of it. So what you do is you click in this drop down, select your version and click set, and then the page will refresh, and whatever record you're looking at will be presented to you in the form that it would be in that version that you selected now. And I think that was it for my little slideshow. So now we'll actually go through and demonstrate what we've discussed. So I'm going to get out of my slideshow, and we're going to go to a demo system. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, cool. All right, so this is our demo system, and I'm in the grants manager. Just to quickly show you that this system actually already has some versions in there. You'll see up at the top we have the active versions. That's the version that is active right now. That if we made a new level 1, it would come in this version. So this is version 2015 3.0. If we go to our version dropdown, we see that we have so many other versions already. But since we're in this webinar, we're going to go make a new version. So as we discussed, we're going to go to global settings. We're going to go to smart versioning, and we're going to make a new version here. For the name of our version, we'll put JSON webinar 2018. Description, we'll say test webinar version. I believe I talked about this condition field earlier. The condition field is used, it's basically saying that you can put variables here, like you can resolve variables, and when the form is generated, the version will only take hold if this condition here is fulfilled. So, for example, you could put that, you know, maybe there are some country-specific fields, and your condition could be me.location or me.address, so on and so forth. Well, for the purposes of this webinar, we're not going to use any conditions for demo version. We're just going to leave that blank. So as we discussed, after we press save, we get our method or like data stamps here. You can see when we created this version. And now we have the option here for version objects. So here we're going to select the UTA. So our UTA today is going to be grants. And now we can select the entity. So we can do level 1, level 2, level 3. Somebody wanted to do level 2, so we'll do level 2. So let's look at the level 2 of grants and see if we have versions on that already. Right, so even on this level 2, we do have a good couple of versions. So we're going to go back to our version. We're going to select activity. We're going to take snapshot. And so remember, if you remember what we discussed before, that the versioning takes a snapshot of the core field set. So you notice that the pop-up says, are you sure you want to create a snapshot of the baseline custom fields for the selected entity? Now, before we do that, I really want to demonstrate I want to show you guys in what versioning looks like in action. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make for argument's sake. No, actually, no, never mind. We're going to go ahead and take our version. So we're going to click take snapshot. It asks us, do you want to create a snapshot of the baseline custom fields for the selected entity? We select yes. And so when the page refreshes, you now see that we have a version for the level 2 fields, and it's timestamped. So now if I go back to my grant page, my level 2 custom field page, I refresh it. Now you see that in the version dropdown, I now have the option for JSON webinar 2018. So this would be my new version that we just created. What we can do is we can also activate that version for the grant manager. So we're going to go to our configuration settings. We're going to go to the level 2. We're going to scroll down to where you see current version. So you click current version, and you select the new version that you just made. and you click activate. It prompts you if you're sure you want to activate the selected version, and you click yes. All right, and now, so our new version is successfully activated. So now any new level 2 that is made in our Grants Manager will come in our JSON webinar version, which is great. So and let's test this out, right? So let's see if we make some fields in the JSON webinar version. We'll see if it's available in the other versions. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna make a new custom field. We're gonna call it test webinar field, and we'll say which version does this activity belong to? And we'll make the display order 0 so we can see it. So what I'd like you to notice is that the field that I just made, I made it in the core field set. I haven't made it in the JSON webinar version yet. So there are one of two ways that I can promote it to the JSON webinar version. So the longer way would be to go back through my global settings. So I can go back to global settings. I can go back to smart versioning, go back to JSON webinar. And here I can, all I can do is I can take another snapshot of the grants level 2 custom fields, because I just added it in the core field set. So when I take a new snapshot now, that field will be captured within my new snapshot and updated. So if we were to click take snapshot, you see the pop-up says there are existing custom fields for the selected entity under this version. Are you sure you want to overwrite the current version with a snapshot of the baseline custom fields? So it recognizes that you already have a snapshot of that level 2 in there, and it's asking you if you want to update it. So this is one way you can do it if maybe you made a lot of changes or you just wanted to start from fresh again with this version. The easier way, or I guess the smaller scale way, is to actually just promote that single custom field. So we'll go back to our Grant Manager level 2 custom fields. We're in the core field set, and we're gonna select this field that we just made. And as soon as you hit the check mark, you see that we get this little icon up here that says copy to other version. So we click this icon, and now we can select that we want to promote it to the JSON webinar version. You also have the option that if this field already exists in the version, then you can just ignore it, don't update it, don't make any changes to it. Or if the field already exists and maybe you made some changes in the core field set to it, you want to update it with those changes, you can select update. So here, we're just going to hit submit on this. You get a message saying update completed. And now if we go and check our JSON webinar custom fields, we now see that, okay, now we have that new field that we had made in our core field set, the test webinar field. And so now let's take a look at what this looks like on our record. So we go to grants. We'll take any level 1 and we will make, I think I have to enable new activities. Or maybe I can go into an already existing activity. Okay. All right, so this activity is in the JSON webinar 2018. It has the field which version does this activity belong to, as opposed to if we were to set it to a different version, like version 2017, we would not expect, right, so we don't see that field in the older version, but we do have it in our core field set and in our JSON webinar version. Yep. So, this is pretty much an example of how you can use the versioning tool to be working on, like, for example, if the JSON webinar was maybe a future version of your application fields, you can use it and see how the form will look, pretty faithfully without having to actually make these fields in quote unquote production or what is exposed to the applicant really. So it's good for security. It saves you a lot of headache, that kind of stuff. So that was pretty much the little demo that I had. Do you guys have any questions? Let me switch to the question slide.
All right, does anyone have any questions right now? All right, I think that's it for today. Well, on our end, thank you so much for attending this webinar. As I mentioned earlier, this is the final webinar of the year. If you have suggestions for us as to what to cover for next year, if you have any webinar topic requests, definitely send us an email at support@smartsimple.com or, oh, we have a question over here before we wrap up. Can you use the conditions box to have versions become available on a certain date?
I guess you could, depending on what date variable you're using. To me, it would be easier to just activate the version on that date, but I guess I think I might have to hear a little bit more about the context behind this, but to me, it would be easier to just activate the version on that date.
Okay.
But if you want, you can definitely shoot me an email. My email addresses should be on the screen, and if you want to talk about it further.
Okay. Anything else again before we wrap up? All right. I guess that's it, Jason. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It was a great year of webinars. Thank you so much for attending. How many did we have? I think we have almost 20 webinars for the year. So it's been a good run. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any webinar topic requests, definitely send us an email and we could look into putting that together for next year. Thank you again for a great year, everyone. Happy holidays. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.